Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about why modern AAA gaming is dying. And when I say dying, I don't mean in terms of games not making as much money or anything like that. I mean dying as in is nowhere near as good as it used to be for the gamer. I mean, there are some cases where it's dying for companies. If you look at Ubisoft, they are going massively downhill. And it's deserved entirely because of the rubbish that they just spew out and hope that gamers just consume, and it's not always going to happen. A lot of gamers will not accept the rubbish that developers and publishers and stuff put out, but some will. And in this video, we're mainly going to be going through, I've basically got a few topics that we're going to talk about. And it started, my idea for this video started because I had a look on, I was basically looking through Steam and stuff to find some games to play. And I use a website called SteamDB. I've got it all linked up, and it shows me a rough percentage or a rough amount of concurrent players for games. And I had a look at Dying Light 1 because the game is currently on sale. And it had, at the time of me looking, it had about 17,000 people concurrently playing the game. Then I had a look at Dying Light 2, which is the modern version, the modern game is the sequel. And that has 2,000 or 3,000 less players. So the first game, which was released in 2015, has more players than the game released in 2022. AAA gaming has been going downhill for at least the last 4 years, and it continues to get worse and worse every single year. But with Dying Light, when it comes to Dying Light 2 at least, when I made a video complaining about the DLC they released called Bloody Ties, people were just sitting there in the comments saying, oh yeah, you're wrong about this, blah blah blah. And a lot of people mentioned that I was expecting something close to the following. I was expecting a big DLC, and they got that right. But people were saying that the game had only been out for about 9 months, and the following took about 13 months to add that into the game. The following was like a big expansion to Dying Light 1. Whereas the Bloody Ties DLC was basically just a gauntlet, a time attack, time trial, whatever you want to call it, where it's it's arena-based. It was a very, very small DLC that people paid extra money to play, and it was also a DLC that players complained about when it was released in 2015 or 2016 or whatever for Dying Light 1. And now what they've done is they've added a gore system into the game, which happened around the same time as Dead Island 2 releasing. But not only that, Dying Light 2 has now been out for 14 months, and there hasn't even been an announcement for the next DLC. So 13 months after Dying Light 1, we had the following expansion. Then 14 months after Dying Light 2, we've had a bunch of random updates adding different things into the game and stuff like that. And a pathetic DLC, which added an arena-based sort of mode into the game that players complained about when it comes to the first game. So it seems as though the companies involved, like Techland and stuff, they do not care about player requests, player feedback, or anything like that. They wanted the simple option for DLC, so they based it on something they created in the past. Then another one, and it's more than likely going to be a personal sort of complaint about AAA gaming, and it's becoming more and more prevalent, more widespread. A lot more games are starting to do this. They are starting to put the best stuff you can get for the game, based on how players respond with feedback and stuff, after the completion of the story. The last 2 AAA games to release have both done this in the form of Star Wars Jedi Survivor. You don't get the red lightsaber until you complete the story. And then Dead Island 2. A lot of the quests to unlock legendary weapons don't come until after the story. And I believe the end sort of legendary weapon you get for completing the main story, the one that I had bug out if you've seen my video talking about it, I believe they have said that that was too powerful to let players use through the story. So these game companies are expecting people to beat their game, spend 15 to 20 hours playing it, beat the game. Then they are giving them the best stuff available, expecting them to go back through and play the game over and over again. And I think that's just becoming a scummy practice by companies to build up playtime from players to get them going through the games over and over again, just playing through the same stuff over and over again, in order to show investors and stuff that they can keep players on their game, keep them playing for long periods of time and stuff. And if you look at Dead Island 2, they offer most of the legendary weapons after the completion of the story, and there's not even New Game Plus. So you can't go through the game again with those weapons from the start and be really powerful and have loads of fun. You get given those weapons, and then you have side quests, lost and found quests, and the zombies roaming the open world to go and slay with those weapons. And then if you look at other games, AA games, indie games, there is a game called Vampire Survivors, and this game is going to set you back £4, and that's if you don't play through Game Pass. And this game offers hundreds of hours of fun. Yes, the game looks like complete shit, the graphics are horrible for it, but that does not in any way take away from the gameplay. The gameplay, I'm going to say, is one of the best games I've played in recent years. I absolutely love Vampire Survivors. It's going to cost you £4 if you're not playing it through Game Pass, offers loads and loads of hours worth of fun, and they don't rush DLC out. They don't make half-assed DLC. They put thought into their DLC, they release it when it's ready, bug-free, and the DLC will cost you £2. It will offer loads of secrets, new weapons, new characters, a new map, and it's going to cost you £2. Whereas Dying Light 2, they offer you an arena mode that nobody's asked for, nobody wants, and they charge you 4 times as much. Sometimes these companies are charging even more than like £10 for their DLC. It takes ages to come into the game, and it's not even worth half the asking price. And then when it comes to things like, we've got early access, there are cheap AA and indie games that are on Steam, and they provide better optimization and polishing, and the games actually work on PC. There's a lot of AAA games that have released on Steam this year that do not work. In fact, I don't think there's been a single AAA PC port this year that has been stable, that hasn't had game-breaking bugs and stuff, besides maybe the Resident Evil 4 remake, which was just filled with microtransactions anyway. And then before people go mentioning Dead Space, the remake, in the comments, there was a game-breaking bug in that one, which locked all the doors, saying they were all on standby and stopped players making any progress. And then when it comes to conversations I've had in the comments and stuff, yes, most games do have bugs and performance issues, but it's not the fact that they are there, it's how bad some of them are that's unacceptable. If a game's got ragdoll features, like you kill an enemy and they ragdoll, they fly 100 foot up into the air, that's funny. If you've got some texture clipping, like for an example, someone's arm is like the sleeve of their t-shirt's going into their arm or something like that, it's okay. But when there's crashes, there's enemies not spawning properly, your frame rate's being inconsistent, it is not acceptable, especially when you're paying £60 to £70 for the game. And I've played a plethora of £70 Xbox releases in the last few years that have bugs, performance issues, really, really bad ones, server problems, and even more. But I've played loads of smaller games that offer value to the gamer, not to the suits. They provide fun, entertainment, there's barely any bugs. If there is, they're hot fixed out of the game. We don't have to wait weeks and weeks for patches and stuff. And I want you guys to think back to Outriders when I say this. That game was entirely unplayable for 4 days after it launched, all due to server issues, which have continued throughout its entire lifespan. And then the game decided to steal players' characters entirely, lock them out of the game with that character, they have to start again if they want to play. And it took them about 10 weeks to fix that problem. And because of that, all the other bugs and stuff were, like, the ones that they were working on fixing, that was all delayed because it took so long to get the players' characters back. So other things stayed broken, and if you look at the game now, it picks up around 600 concurrent players at the weekend. And it's nothing to do with the age of the game. Dying Light 1 has, like, over 15,000 concurrent players at the weekend. I think even the Borderlands games, even number 3, which in a lot of players' opinion was the worst one, that even has way more players than Outriders. And I'm going to say developers are to blame for part of it because they should be using their education, their experience and everything like that to code games properly, no matter how complex they are. Publishers are more to blame because they're constantly looking for the biggest profit they can find to please the investors and stuff. They use all these big brands to build hype like Avengers. That game used the Marvel brand just to drive sales to a game that should have cost no more than £20 at launch for the experience you got. Investors are to blame because they demand profits by certain deadlines and stuff, so they push to get games released due to hype windows and things like the bonus of Christmas sales boosts. And last but definitely not least, players are to blame because they have this carrot dangled in front of them on a stick and they bite. The official Star Wars Twitter account revealed that Star Wars would have bugs and performance issues. This is Jedi Survivor. They also stated they would fix the problems in weeks after the launch, weeks after they've taken your money, and people will rush to the thread and start talking and saying stupid shit like, oh, you're doing a great job, ignore the haters. And it's like, are you mad? They've just told you the game you're going to be spending £60-70 on is going to have issues in the form of bugs and performance. And if you look at the performance reviews for Jedi Survivor, it's not great across all platforms. But after they've said that, and they've officially said that, you have people still defending them. These companies like EA, Ubisoft and Activision are spending millions and millions creating the games that they are making, and they cannot get things right properly, probably because they spend so much money on celebrity appearances like Keanu Reeves in Cyberpunk, and they also spend a lot of money on marketing. Then they don't have enough to spend on proper developing because it's too much of a struggle to make a profit after. Players need to stop defending this shit. Yeah, patches and stuff come out, and a lot of games have day one patches now, which also actually means that the game is incomplete by the time they're going to launch it. So they have to rush to get out a day one patch to fix some of the issues, because they never fix most of the issues. It's only some of the issues, and typically some of the bigger issues. And while that sort of thing's happening, you're getting these reviewers that get their early copies. They mislead people with their 9 out of 10 ratings despite only playing 40% of the game because they only played through the story. They didn't experience any of the side content whatsoever, which is actually like equals more than the story itself. And yes, I'm talking about IGN. But then with that, FOMO kicks in so people can't miss out on the latest game in their favourite franchise, and they'll start going mad at anyone that tells the truth about the game that they love or the idea that they love that's been put into a game. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much shiny glitter you put on a turd, it's still going to be a turd underneath. And you wouldn't go and buy an incomplete meal or an incomplete car. It just wouldn't happen. And I'm going to put an image up on screen that my friend Sean sent me, which is so accurate. And if you take a look at this picture, tell me you can't see that that is happening in the AAA gaming space. We used to get a car as a full release, and then we'd get a motorbike as DLC. But now we're getting the bodywork of the car as the base game, and the DLC is adding the wheels and stuff on, and all you get all the updates for the engine and things like that. Not only that, but a lot of big companies will sit there and lie. They're not going to sit there and openly tell you, besides Star Wars, they're not going to openly tell you their game's going to be broken at launch. But when you look at some previous games over the years that have done this, one that comes to mind is Anthem. They claimed that Anthem took 7 years to develop, when in actual fact it took 5 years to come out of pre-production, meaning they were coming up with ideas and brainstorming for the game for about 5 years. They kept having the EA member of staff that was overlooking the game go out to the studio and see it. They kept taking the fly-in out of the game, putting the fly-in back in, and they changed a lot of stuff back and forth with that game. And another little known fact, I believe it's a little known fact, a single year, just 1 year before Anthem launched, they had one mission complete and ready to go for the game. Meaning that the game that was closed down by EA, that was going to get an entire overhaul, was developed entirely besides a single mission in 1 year. But they claimed that it took 7 years, and now we're seeing things like Respawn and EA being praised for making Jedi Survivor in 3 years. And I wonder why it was made that quick. Performance issues. And then, yeah, they might not be, like the games we're going to talk about, they might not be the exact same genre, game style, or anything like that. But I've had way more fun with Insurgency Sandstorm and Hell Let Loose in recent times than what I've had with Modern Warfare 2. And in fact, you can buy both Hell Let Loose and Insurgency Sandstorm for £10 less than you can buy Modern Warfare 2 on its own. AAA gaming is only getting worse. Games are constantly delayed, which also makes people think the games are being polished when they're not, because they still release really broken. Companies don't like hiring QA testers and stuff anymore. We've got no consumer protection or standards in the industry whatsoever. And in my honest opinion, AAA companies need to either step up their quality control and make good games, or leave the gaming space and let the indie and AA developers make games for gamers. We just want to have fun. We don't want the most powerful weapons locked up in a satire game until after you've completed the story, to which there's no new game plus. And yes, I'm talking about Dead Island 2 again. They created a game, I believe it was 2011, Dead Island 1. That game had 20 legendary weapons, and they were obtainable as random drops from killing certain enemies. You then look at Dead Island 2, which was about I think it was like 10 years in the making. It was supposed to release in 2015, so after development. It didn't release until 2023. There are 8 legendary weapons in the entire game that all come from either completion of the story, to which the weapon can bug out, lost and found quests, which are filler content, at least when you're doing the missing person ones, or they come from a couple of the side quests in the game as well. But there are 8 altogether, none are random drops, and the majority of them don't come until after you've completed the story. That is nothing but a stunt to get players to invest more time into the game so that they can show people, they can get people to spend more time in the game, and it lines them up for a better future creating video games. And I'm not saying that one's on the developers. Obviously, I don't know it inside out, but it's very, very fishy that games are locking up their best stuff until the game is complete, and you have to run through it again if you want to use that stuff. Well, I hate to break it to them, but fuck the legendary weapons. I am not going doing all the lost and found quests after completing the story just to use a weapon that's a little bit more powerful than the ones I used previously. And this, in my opinion, is why modern AAA gaming is dying. You have incompetent developers, whether people want to blame them or not. A lot of developers are incompetent in the AAA gaming space. You have greedy publishers and investors, and you've got gullible and forgiving gamers. I've seen a lot of my videos get disliked into another dimension when I tell you not to buy a shitty looking AAA game. So why do the companies making these games get a free pass with every release that they actually release? Jedi Fallen Order had a load of bugs, including game-breaking bugs that they knew about but never told anyone because they had a certain deadline to release the game in. Then it comes round to the sequel, Jedi Survivor. People fall for it a second time. They purchase the game to realise that even with a 4090, you're going to struggle to get 60 FPS in areas of the game. The performance is awful. It barely ever reaches 60 FPS in performance mode on the Series X, yet people are lapping it up. They're absolutely loving it. They're defending the practices and stuff. But not only that, they had the nerve to put out a tweet with a picture saying this is what we have to say, and they're blaming the fucking players for having different configurations with their PCs. We've seen some people with the most powerful chipsets or whatever that are designed for Windows 11 playing on Windows 10, and that's why we think players are having problems. We're working to fix these issues. But what if said person playing on Windows 10 upgraded to Windows 11 and still had the same problems? Because that's more than likely due to the fact that the game is not fully optimized for any platform at all. People are spending thousands and thousands of dollars, pounds, whichever currency. They are spending thousands to play video games, and these big monster video games like Jedi Survivor, Dead Island 2, the ones that set you back £60 to £70, unless you're going for the bigger editions, going to cost you up to £100. Why are they the worst games to buy? But more importantly, when a company does it, why do they get a free pass and the sequel gets loads of sales? I believe it's all because of FOMO, like misleading, like policies and whatever you want to, like practices. It's all because of things like that. These companies promise you this big game from your favorite franchise. They take your money straight away, and that's the end of it. The people just accept it and move on. And apparently it's okay for them to do that because they've created a good gameplay loop. It's fun when it works smoothly, but there are lots of times throughout the gameplay where it's not gonna run smooth. What happens after Jedi Survivor when they release the next game? They make it a trilogy, and it's the same if not worse. People will do the same stuff again, they'll defend it because of the stuff I've mentioned in this video. So what I'm going to say is grow a backbone, have some self-respect, and start demanding the quality we deserve, because AAA gaming is dying for gamers. We are spending all this money, we are not getting the product that we are supposedly paying for, and it's really starting to take the piss because it's getting worse and worse. These companies are putting way less effort in, and they are basically bringing in more and more money. A lot of these companies are turning into full-blown suit corporations that are about nothing but profit, and players are letting them do it. Money might not be an issue for some people when they're happy to throw it away, but it is an issue for others. People that work and have families, they just want to have fun when they load up the game they've just spent a day's wages on. There are so many games out there that are cheap, that are fun, that don't have many problems, if any problems. But because the marketing is there, because they know how to build hype, these AAA companies shit on players year in, year out, but it's just getting worse and worse. Look at Cyberpunk 2077. Yes, the game's had fixes, the same as Battlefield 2042, but that game's been out for 2.5 years now, and we still don't have DLC for it. My final note before we wrap this one up is that if you are defending the games that follow these release now and fix later practices for £60 to £70 a pop, then you are a big part of the problem. That is going to be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts and stuff about the topics we spoke about in the video. Let me know in the comments. And check out this video if you want to see other content on the channel. I will see you in the next one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.